Farhan thinks that the Incarnation is blasphemy, that it's beneath God to become man, to suffer, or even eat food. But what he's mocking isn't Christianity, it's just a straw man built by the Quran. Let's look at what he says, and then we'll respond with the actual theology.
Some people claim that God became a man, but if you stop and think, you realize it's not just wrong, it's impossible. It goes against reason, against human nature, and against what God tells us in the Quran. God by definition is unlimited, eternal, self-sufficient, and perfect. And man by definition is limited, temporary, needy, and imperfect. Saying God became a man is like saying the infinite became finite. It's not deep, it's not mysterious, it's a logical contradiction.
Farhan seems to misunderstand what Christians actually believe. We're not saying that God turned into a man or stopped being God. Chalcedonian Christology makes it crystal clear. Jesus Christ is one person with two natures, fully God and fully man, without confusion, change, division, or separation. The divine nature stayed infinite, eternal, and perfect. He added human nature, not by losing anything, but by taking on something new. It's not the infinite becoming finite, it's the infinite uniting to the finite. When Jesus slept, ate, or suffered, that was through his human nature, not because his divine nature got weaker. And ironically, even the Quran has Allah entering into creation, speaking from a bush, sending his spirit into Mary, showing up on the Day of Judgment, even revealing his shin according to the Hadith. So let's not pretend Islam teaches that there's a God who's too transcendent to enter into creation. You already believe the Creator can do that without ceasing to be the Creator.
God doesn't need oxygen, food, sleep, or blood. Creation does, and the Creator never becomes a creation. Even before any books or philosophy, every human being naturally feels that the Creator must be above weakness. No child naturally believes God eats, sleeps, or dies, or that God is a human or can become a human. This is the fitrah, the pure instinct, the natural disposition that we incline to that Allah has placed inside of us.
Of course, the idea that God would become man isn't something that you'd figure out just naturally by looking around. That's exactly why Christians believe it's a revelation, not something humans invented, but something God disclosed because we couldn't reach it on our own. If fitra was enough, the nations wouldn't have fallen into idolatry and worshipped animals, demons, and men. Human nature is broken. So the so-called pure instinct didn't preserve people from corruption. It needed to be healed, and that's exactly why God, in his mercy, became man, not by ceasing to be God, but by taking on human nature to restore ours. As Athanasius put it, he became what we are so that we might become what he is. Richard Swinburne, coming at it from a philosopher's angle, backs this up. A perfectly loving God would want to stand in solidarity with us, not just commanding from a distance, but stepping into our world, sharing in our suffering, teaching us directly by example, and offering reconciliation in the most personal way possible. That's not a betrayal of divine greatness. It's the highest expression of it.
Sometimes people say, but God can do anything. Couldn't he become a man if he wanted to? But think carefully. God is capable of all things. But God being a man is not a thing. It would be like asking, can God make a squared circle? And even if something like that were somehow real, becoming weak, limited, and dependent would never befit his majesty. Can God become a pile of dirt? A pile of waste? Poop? Of course not. It's not about God's power, it's about his perfection and his attributes.
There is no contradiction in saying that Jesus had two natures, fully God and fully man, united in one person. A contradiction means affirming and denying the same thing in the same way, but that's not what Christians are doing. Jesus is immortal according to his divine nature, immortal according to his human nature. That's not incoherent, that's historic Christianity. The Council of Chalcedon laid it down centuries ago. Two natures not fused, not blurred, not watered down, each retaining its attributes. That's in direct contrast to Monophysitism, the heresy that said Christ only had one nature after the Incarnation, a divine one. Or even worse, Eutychianism pushed that further, claiming Christ's humanity was basically dissolved into his divinity, like a drop of honey in the ocean, leaving a third mutated nature that was neither fully God nor fully man. But Jesus isn't a fusion. The divine nature stayed infinite. His human nature was real, limited, and able to suffer, and both are united in one person, the eternal Son of God. That's what we call the hypostatic union. It's deep, yeah, but it's not a logical impossibility like a squared circle. And if your big rebuttal is, can God become poop? Congrats, you've left theology and entered middle school. God didn't unite himself to garbage. He united himself to human nature, made in his image. If you can't tell the difference between man and a piece of poop, you're honestly just clowning yourself.
Think carefully. If someone claims God became a man, they are also claiming, astaghfirullah, that God would be eating, sleeping, urinating, defecating. How absurd would it be to claim that about the Lord of the worlds? Exalted is Allah above what they attribute to him. This is not humility, it is blasphemy against his perfection. Allah is pure and perfect, far above any human weakness.
The Christian God doesn't stay distant from weakness, he steps into it out of love. Philippians 2 says Christ, being in the very nature of God, humbled himself and emptied himself, not by losing his divinity, but by taking on humanity. And Hebrews 2 and 4 says that he became like us in every way, to become a merciful high priest, able to sympathize with our weaknesses. When Jesus ate, slept, and suffered, he did so in his human nature, not the divine one, and that's not weakness, that's what true greatness actually looks like. Meanwhile, Farhan, your Quran says that Jesus and Mary ate food, as if Christians ever denied that Jesus had a real body or thought Mary was part of the Trinity. That's not an argument, that's a straw man, because your book can't refute the real doctrine, and I'm not sure that Muhammad actually knew what the doctrine was. Corruption and death didn't scare the Word, they summoned him. The real blasphemy isn't that God came near, it's thinking the Creator's love is too high to stoop that low.